was like mood lighting.
I think it was post-yoga.
Post-yoga mood lighting. Summer is upon us in here. Summer and the 3 jewels. Let's take somebody's cushion. Bruce, nice to see you.
Take a good long look. After next week, it's going to have to last here for a while. Sorry to say.
Where they all go.
That's right.
Sad to see. I'm going to meditate on Bruce for a little while at the beginning of class somehow.
It's not the road to serenity, believe me.
We still got next week.
That's right.
I hope.
Yeah, next week.
You ready, sir?
Sashi Bhagi Jeshin Retaksha Nrirav Lingshi Nyandegam Padi Sangha Shindu Miteguargi Dropin Namda Shimla Jivarsho Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyatayami Sangha Jidam Zogi Jognanga Janchu Bardu Dakni Yasuchi Daki Jinyangi Bezanangi Drola Vanchir Sangha Dripansho Sangha Jidam Zoki Jognam Janchu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Jinyangi Pezanangi Drola Vanchir Sangha Dripansho Sangha Jidam Zogi Jognam Janchu Bardu Dakni Gyapsuchi Daki Jinyangi Pezanangi Drola Vanchir Sangha Driparsho.
So please check your posture and ensure that your spine is straight and you're sitting comfortably for brief meditation. It's important to shift gears and take your mind out of the space that it's been in If it's been wrapped up in mundane things all day, try to take it out of that place and reposition for this evening. By watching our breathing, we can begin to shift gears and calm the mind. So please watch your breath. Be aware of the breath flowing past the tips of the nostrils. Count 21 rounds, beginning with an exhalation followed by an inhalation as one round. Visualize or imagine a brilliant white light in your heart, area of your heart, glowing, radiant. Take a moment to place your mind and your awareness there. Gather a sense of it. Maintain that awareness and also be aware of all of the devastation and suffering, natural disasters, those we're aware of, like Nepal, and those we may not even be aware of. Imagine all of the suffering, all its forms accumulating as a black smoke, all of the injury and destruction and despair collecting, flowing into one large stream of black smoke flowing away from all of those beings, all of those suffering beings. Visualize or see or feel the suffering leaving them in the form of this black stream which flows and collects one great river of blackness. You see it concentrate into a black mass, becoming smaller and smaller, traveling towards you. See it in this place in front of you. Bring your awareness again to the brilliant white light in your heart. Be aware of that love and kindness and compassion. At the same time, being aware of the great suffering there in front of you. You see that black ball becoming smaller and smaller until it's small enough to fit inside the white orb in your heart. And then see the white orb in your heart become brighter and take it in a flash destroy it. And see and feel this love and compassion flowing out from your heart. White streams of light, going back to all of those same places, bringing joy and happiness and goodness and every possible needed thing. Every happiness, every goodness. And feel the joy and happiness and love flowing back into your heart from all of those beings. You can think all of their negative karmas have been purified, all of their suffering has been purified, and they are surrounded by holy beings and great participle of bliss. Homage to all holy beings everywhere. Thank you for coming. So tonight we're on to Master Shantideva and the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So this was taught around 700 AD. Which of course is 10, 11, and 12 in the original series, right? Holy Geshe Michael spent about a year covering the material. Holy Ken Rinpoche spent about 10 years covering the material. We'll spend 2 nights, a couple of hours. Super condensed, right? So if you have not done the full courses, I would absolutely recommend you to do so. The text is very beautiful. especially the 9th and 10th chapter, the chapter on wisdom and the dedication chapter. We're using a famous commentary by Gyaltsab, who is a primary disciple of Jason Kappa. In the monastery, they don't study the guide as one of the 5 great books. It's not classified like that. But we include it because it's one of the greatest books ever written. And the chapter on wisdom is actually one of the most masterful presentations on emptiness that's presented in text. So the 9th chapter on wisdom goes into worldview and correct view. And really the reason to study Buddhism is because of that. The entire worldview that we have in our civilization is not Buddhist, you could say. The Buddhist worldview is completely different than Western worldview. And a Buddhist walking into a Western civilization would just say, it's wrong, it's just wrong, it's a wrong worldview, it's a wrong way of thinking, it's a wrong way of living. And that we live in the world and relate to the world in a way that just doesn't work. You know, it doesn't matter how effortful we are, or how sincere we are, or how smart we are. The things that Western civilization have taught us will not lead to happiness and don't work to produce happiness. They're not the causes of happiness and they're not the sources of happiness. And the whole concept of our civilization doesn't work. And hundreds of millions of people, billions I suppose, get up every day and make great efforts every day and struggle every day trying to bring themselves happiness using methods and techniques that aren't the cause of happiness and simply don't work to bring about happiness, right? So, millions of people go to bed every night thinking that they've done something to bring about their happiness when in fact they haven't, because it's simply the wrong approach. They're pursuing a source of suffering instead of a source of happiness. And so, from a Buddhist perspective, it's like watching children playing with razor blades, where it's just like they don't even know that they're sharp, they don't even know that they can cut them until it's too late, and then they get hurt and the damage is done. And we're like that karmically. So Master Shantideva, in the 9th chapter, is delving deeply into wisdom, right? Now, this is supposed to be a book about compassion, right? This is supposed to be a text all about compassion. But the point, one of the reasons why he does this is because the way we view the world is so incorrect and so antithetical to our happiness that it leads to compassion, understanding how things really exist, understanding that we're living essentially the opposite of that, or so divergent, in such a divergent fashion from true reality, is really a source of compassion. It's a source of relating to people to generate compassion and develop compassion, right? So Master Shantideva spends the 9th chapter going into that. So he really throws out this challenge saying, you know what, it doesn't matter how much effort you make, doesn't matter what you do, you are not going to succeed in living a happy life as long as you're living by that worldview. You have to live by this other worldview to truly be happy. So because he's compassionate, he's trying to teach us about correct view. He's trying to teach us what compassion means. And so we have to get into that. There's a particular way in which we develop compassion, which he goes into in the guide. Right? So tonight we're gonna get into the first, tonight and next week, these 2 classes, we're going to get into the first third of the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Right? So, and then we have 2 more courses that cover the other 2/3 of the guide. So when we do review course 18, the first 4 classes will be covering the last 2/3 of the guide. Right? All right. So the name of the book, I'm not going to do this Tibetan, but it basically means to enter the activities of Bodhisattva. The literal Tibetan is entering the activities of a Bodhisattva, and it's translated as a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life. Same idea, right? You're entering into the things that bodhisattvas do. Okay. Master Shantideva, Shanti is peace, and Deva is like an angel, or a god, something like that. And so that's the meaning of his name in Sanskrit. And his nickname, does anybody remember his nickname from the original courses? Yeah, Mr. Three Thumbs, right? Does it ring a bell? So, because he only thought about three things, right?
Appeal to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, just to relate very, very briefly, the story. So he was at Nalanda Monastery, which is one of the great monasteries of all time in ancient India, around 700. And the monks would come by and check on him, and he would basically just be hanging out in his room, lying on the bed, or sitting around, or whatever. In the monasteries, you normally memorize, recite, and debate, right? And so he wasn't doing any of those things. He wasn't showing up at debate, and he wasn't walking around reciting, and he wasn't memorizing, the books either. And so, because it was one of the great monasteries, they started to feel like, this guy is freeloading. I mean, he's here eating our food, month after month, year after year, all these years, and he's not doing anything. He's not doing any of the monkly activities that he's supposed to be doing. And so they started to become, I suppose, resentful or inhospitable, you could say, towards him. And they felt that he wasn't welcome there anymore. And so he was an embarrassment to Nalanda as a great monastery. So they started to actually call him Mr. Three Thoughts, Dushe Sambhava. In Sanskrit, it's Busuku. So it got to be so bad, and they thought that he was so useless that they finally concocted a scheme to get rid of him and to get him out of the monastery. They wanted to eject him from the monastery. They just felt that he was too much of an embarrassment to continue to be a member. So it's normal that monks would give teachings at the assembly once in a while, and so they approached him and they said, Busuku, it's normal that everyone gives a teaching, and how about you come to the assembly and give a teaching to the rest of us, do something for a change, right? And so they asked him if he would come and give a teaching, which of course he said, if you insist, I'll come, yes. And they said, great, they thought it was wonderful. He's never going to be able to teach. He's going to be embarrassed, and he'd be so embarrassed, and he'd lose face, and he would be ashamed to stay, and so he would leave. And so they decided that they would help him along by making it even more embarrassing for him, and even more uncomfortable for him, and even more difficult for him. And so normally in the temple you have a teaching throne, and there are different heights according to how big the teacher is, I guess you'd say. The higher the teacher, the higher the throne, I guess you could say, something like that. And normally you have steps that lead up to the throne. I mean, you may have seen them, right? So a really high throne is like you need like a runway steps, like a serious set of steps to get up there. So they made a large throne for his teaching for when the appointed time came, and they didn't put any steps. So to further make it embarrassing and difficult for him. So the time came, he showed up, and normally when you started teaching, you prostrate 3 times to indicate that prostrate to enlightened holy beings, sort of indicating that they know everything and omniscient and can teach perfectly, and I'll sit here and say something anyway, right? Because I'm the one that's here. So anyway, so he prostrated to the throne 3 times, and they were sort of getting excited and warmed up to see what would happen, and then suddenly he was on top of the throne, and they didn't even see how he got there, and so they were all kind of like, what just happened? So, and then he asked them, well, would you like me to teach something new, or would you like me to teach something, from a text that's already been written? I said, something new, great. And so he started to simply recite. He said, I'll do this little thing called the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. And so he started teaching, and it's one of the greatest books ever written. And so he was simply reciting from memory the prose. And they couldn't believe it, and they were shocked, right? And so he continued on, and he went through all the chapters. There are 10 chapters, and when we got to the 9th chapter, which is on emptiness, ultimate reality, then he was really blowing them away, and he started to lose people, and they couldn't understand him because it was too deep. And then as the topic became more and more profound, he started to rise into the air higher and higher. and the advanced meditators went into deep meditation to be able to follow him and project their minds and follow him as he rose into the sky, and went further and further away, and he just sort of disappeared into the sky like a little dot in the sky, like a plane or whatever traveling away. And so those advanced meditators who were in deep meditation could continue to hear him as he was reciting the rest of the 9th chapter. And then after a while, everybody said, "Well, what happened? What's going on?" And they said, "Well, I only heard 8 chapters. I heard the 8th chapter." And it was like, "No, there are 9 chapters. I heard the 9th chapter." People were like, "Well, there are 10 chapters. I heard the 10th chapter." And so there wasn't even agreement about how many chapters were in the book, because different people couldn't hear the full complement of the text, right? So then they're like, "Oh my God, where'd he go? We have to find him." So they sent out search parties and looked for him, and they found him, 6 months later in southern India, hanging out by a stupa like a average person that nobody knew, just sort of anonymously, just chilling by the stupa or doing whatever he was doing. And so then they sent the contingents to supplicate him and make requests that he would come back to Nalanda, and he basically was like, "No, I don't think I want to go back to your monastery." He said, "But if you really want the text, I've written it out and it's in my room. I've written it out in Sanskrit. It's in the rafters in my room, and you can get the text, and you can have the text, and if you want it." And so that's how the text came down. And that's why we have it today. So that's how the Bodhisattva Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life came to us and was handed down to us. And that's the story of Master Shantideva. And so one of the first things that he teaches, even before we get into the book, is how to think about people and how to treat people and how to relate to people. And basically lesson in not judging people. He spent years at the monastery being judged and being called Busuku, Mr. Three Thoughts, because he was so interested in food and had to go to the bathroom a lot from his interest in food, and he hung out in his room and reclined or did whatever he did, right? So as we go through life, it's very easy to see people on the subway or see people walking down the street, and it's natural. The mind immediately goes to, this person is this, and this person is that, and this person has got this problem. This person's lower than me, and this person's, there's endless judgments, right, about who's who and what they are and what their worth is, and what they are and what they aren't, right? And so we don't know who anybody is. We don't know what's in their mind unless we can read their mind. We don't know what's in their mind, and we have no clue as to whether or not there's some highly realized being or some afflicted schmuck, right? And in Sarah, there are these sort of the proud young monks. So the debate ground, they're the young proud monks. They look beautiful, they're in their 30s and the chiseled jaw, and they're muscly, and they get up in the debate ground and they put on a great show, and they look wonderful and they're forceful and they're, they sound great, baritone voice. And then, some other less attractive, less presentable monk gets up, to debate with them, and who might be slovenly or unkempt or whatever, and he says, and they debate, and the slovenly older monk will just ask a question like, is blue a color? And say, well, and the good looking guy will say, of course blue's a color, whatever the topic of debate is, right? And then the slovenly monk blows him away because his logic is faulty, and then the good looking guy goes and sits down and slightly embarrassed because he's been toasted on the debate ground, because he looks great, he's beautiful, and he's wonderful, but it's the guy who looks like a schlump who's actually the master, and it's not uncommon that we see it. I mean, especially in the scriptures, especially in the advanced scriptures, they talk about tantric deities and holy beings show up, with all the marks and signs of ugliness, the 32 marks and signs of ugliness, and the first time someone saw them, they were like scared out of their britches, and freaked out because they were like such a nasty piece of work to see, right? So it's those that we don't expect to be a saint or a holy being, or those who don't fit our mental image or our stereotype, we have to be very careful about not judging. Because scripturally, at least, and also experientially, more often than not, they're the smart ones, or the realized ones, or the accomplished ones, or the enlightened ones. So big lesson in it to be very careful about judging, right? So, for us, and I think as practitioners, if one gets to a certain spiritual level in one's own life, I think one starts to care less about what other people think. And it may not even just be spiritual level. I mean, but I'm not going to go to the other stuff. We get to a certain point where we just don't care what other people think. It doesn't matter if you dress in sweatpants or these clothes or those clothes. It's not the priority. And you could look like Joe Schmo, right? You could look like your average old guy, and people could not think much of you, and people could even think of you as Mr. and Ms. Three Thoughts. It's like, here's the unkept guy who doesn't comb his hair and who just, wanders around, not doing much, right? So it's not uncommon, or it's not out of line for someone who's an advanced spiritual practitioner to not even care, very much necessarily about what people think of them or how they look. So that's the first lesson is to, the circumstances under which the book was first taught. Communicate the first lesson around not judging and not worrying about other people, right? We have 84,000 mental afflictions of our own to focus on. If you start focusing on other people, you multiply by another 84,000 mental afflictions. So times 84,000 mental afflictions times 3 times 4. It's like so focus on our own mental afflictions, right? And don't be concerned or even tuned in, I guess you could say, to other people's mental afflictions any more than absolutely necessary for your own practice, right? So that said, let me go through the structure of the book. There are 10 chapters, and the first, I guess, element of any Buddhist book is to sell you. I mean, it's like the first job one anywhere in any business that you go to, right? Is you got to interest your customers. If you don't have interested customers, you don't have, you can't go any further than that, right? You can't make any more progress. So the same is true of any Buddhist book. The first chapter, the opening of the Buddhist book, is to communicate to you why you should care and what the benefits are, and why read this thing. So the same is true of the guide. Master Shantideva opens the book, and the first thing that he tries to do is basically describe the benefits of bodhicitta. All right, and there are 3 different kinds of bodhicitta, basically. And so the first is called sugarcane bodhicitta, which is like sugarcane. And it's the kind of a preliminary feeling that we get. Why do they call it sugarcane bodhicitta, not oak-like bodhicitta? And it's not because they didn't have oak in ancient India. Yeah.
Isn't it because sugarcane is hollow?
Yeah.
It's sweet, but it's hollow.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sweet thing. It's a lovely thing. But it's not strong. It's hollow. It's easily, especially once you suck the sugar out of the milk, it's easily bent or broken. So it's some kind of sweet feeling we get towards other people. It's not real bodhicitta. It's something that just arises momentarily, which is like, oh, poor them. I feel badly for them, and I wish I could do something for them. And then we think about what's for lunch, right? Or perhaps it's more long-lasting in duration, but it's not tempered and it's not seasoned, and I'm not disparaging it, and I'm not making light of it. I think it's the type of bodhicitta that most of us experience, which is fleeting, brief, not necessarily deep or sustained, right? But an important starting place, an important place to begin, an important lead up to bodhicitta, right? Which is, compassion for other people and love for other people, right? If we just are hard of heart and don't care about others, I mean, we're not going to get very far with it, right? So there's a kind of a basic bodhicitta or elementary bodhicitta, and it's actually along the lines of a form of renunciation. It's where we are aware of the limitations of ordinary human life, right? Of this realm, of life in this desire realm. So the fact that this world and nothing in it really works and doesn't bring us happiness and doesn't satisfy us, right? So some kind of feeling of disgust. It's like, I remember when I got out of college and I was in my 20s, and I think we all have this feeling of, in the back of our mind or somewhere in our mind this feeling of, if I just make adjustments to my life, I'll be happy, right? I just have to adjust things and then I'll be happy. And I was very conscious about it in my 20s. Like, what are the major components of my life? There's relationship and dating, there's money, work, spirituality, socialization. I mean, pick your items that are in your mix, right? And I would just say, okay, I need a little more of this. And I'd go out and date more and socialize more. And I'd get tired. It's like, okay, I need less of that. I need more of this. And we'll make more money. And then, that didn't do it. Okay, I need more of that. And it's just year after year, this constant attempt to adjust things and find the right blend and find the right mix so that somehow I would be satisfied and feel good and feel happy and feel some sense of meaning and goodness and joy in my life, right? And I think we all have that. We all have this sense that if I just got enough sleep, if I just meditated a little more, if I just had, one more person in my life and those two people not in my life, if I just found the right partner, if I just did this thing over here, if I just changed partners, just going to tweak things and then it'll be okay. It's fantasy. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. Forget the idea of adjustments, right? Our mind works on this idea that if we make certain adjustments, our life will improve and it will be better and we'll be happy. It's fantasy. It doesn't work. It's not the nature of this realm. So the point about the desire realm is whatever adjustments we make don't bring happiness and won't work. The minute we take the vitamins, the minute we change, we change partners, 6 weeks later something else is off, right? 6 days later, 6 hours later, whatever it is, right? So we can't fix this realm. It doesn't work. And so bodhicitta is actually realizing that everyone's in the same boat, right? I was talking to a friend last night. He called me. He's been looking for a job for a while. And he's like, John, what's wrong? What am I doing wrong? I'm like doing all this with my resume and doing that interview after interview and doing all the things I'm supposed to be doing. What am I doing wrong? What do I need to adjust? What do I need to fix? He said, surely there are people out there that have this figured out. Surely there are people who know how to do this. Surely there are people, who where it works for them, right? And that's how we think, right? We think, surely there are people who are walking down the street around us who are happy. Surely the people that we pass on the avenue who are wearing pretty clothes, and presenting well are happy, right? I was listening to the conversations on the way over here. I walked by somebody and on the cell phone saying, yeah, and she was so upset and disappointed about blah, 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 and they're gone. And I stopped and got something at the cafe and got a guy at the table beside me. He's like, oh yeah, she bought these expensive jeans, and then she spilled something on them, and then she was freaking out, and then on to the next thing, And it's like, everywhere I'm listening and everywhere I turn, people are talking about, this thing didn't work out, that thing didn't work out, they did this, and then they had to go do something else because they were unhappy. And it just doesn't work. It's the nature of this realm. And so we can't fix it, And so recognizing this situation, recognizing that this is a broken realm, that this is a crappy place to be, where we can never be satisfied, we can never find a proper mix and balance where we are happy in any meaningful and lasting way, right? Recognizing that leads to a renunciation, leads to this sense of, it doesn't matter what I do. It's never going to be what I want. Infinite combinations, ad nausea. It's never going to be what I want if I'm pursuing ordinary permutations and combinations of, of desirable objects, right? So that's relative to oneself, right? It's having some kind of awareness of the nature of this realm and stop deluding ourselves and stop fooling ourselves and stop telling ourselves this story that somehow we can find a mix that's the right mix, where I can be happy and satisfied and at peace and life will be good. It's a bill of goods. It's like, find the right mix and life will be good. It's a total bill of goods, right? So knowledge of that, right, is a kind of renunciation. Recognizing that everybody else has got the exact same thing going on and having some feeling about it is bodhicitta. It's like, shit, they got all this problem too. All these people who are dressed up walking down the street, they've got all these same problems. Various other problems, right? they're in the same boat as me. It's a lousy deal, and I've got it, and they got it, right? You know, I'm not happy, they're not happy. I mean, we walk down the street thinking, oh, they're happy, they're happy, they're happy, they're happy, right? Based upon just random visual associations or something, you know? Based upon stories we tell ourselves, right? And we walk down the street and we tell ourselves stories. We get these narratives going in our mind about what everybody else's life is like, and what everybody else is experiencing, and what everybody else is thinking. And, you know, we're deluding ourselves, telling stories all day long that happiness exists out there, and that there is some lasting happiness available, and there isn't. Okay? So, you know, we feel like somehow the people around us have made the appropriate necessary adjustments. They found the right combination and balance, and we haven't. You know, and we're like the loser who couldn't figure it out, right? In fact, we're all losers. Right? So there's two ideas are going on in our mind. If I could just adjust certain things, my life would be okay, right? And there must be other people who are happy somehow, somewhere, right? No, this realm doesn't work. And so, doesn't matter, it won't work out, right? So imagining and recognizing that that's true of every single person around us is the basis of bodhicitta, right? So that's bodhicitta. It's some kind of liberating thought. So it's renunciation applied to everyone by logic, using logic, right? So observing their suffering and deciding that they must be suffering as much as I am. You know, is it possible, you know, that Paul has the perfect balance and mix in his life and he's happy all the time? Yes. No. Right?
It's possible.
It's possible, but from a Buddhist perspective, very low probability.
Right. It's possible.
It is possible. Were he a great practitioner, and there we go back to worldview, we're jumping to chapter 9. From a Buddhist perspective, it's absolutely possible.
Yeah, you can't
Completely,
remove hope.
utterly possible.
Right, you can't tell people it's not possible.
Well, we're in the first chapter here. We gotta work it up, all right? We're doing the sales pitch here, okay? Renunciation. You got a shit deal, all right? There's a better option, you know? This is what you need to do. You'll be happy forever, all right? Stop buying that bill of goods. Stop buying into that old tape that says, that old storyline that goes through our head that says, I just need a little more money. I just need a blue car. I just need somebody who's thinner or taller or whatever, right? You know, stop buying into it, right? So that's bodhicitta. So now there's a very direct, powerful, immediate form of compassion and love that comes from deep meditative realization, which is actually realizing bodhicitta or attaining bodhicitta, which occurs in deep meditation. And so it's this very profound experience that one has, where when one has it, one realizes that they've attained bodhicitta. And so it's a few minutes of extraordinary reaction in one's body and mind, and a knowledge and vision that one has, and where one experiences ultimate love and ultimate compassion towards every living being, right? And so it's one of these experiences where you know it when you have it. And so it's your first moment of perfect love and compassion to every living being, every sentient being. And so then you see your future lives, and you know what you'll be doing with your future lives, and you know that for all of your future, this life and future lives, that you will be serving other people, that you will be working to bring other people out of suffering, and that's what you'll spend your lives on, and that you're a real bodhisattva. So that's the third type of bodhicitta, is the actual experience of bodhicitta, the direct realization and experience of bodhicitta. Most of us, we're kind of dallying. I mean, when one begins the path, we're dallying with sugarcane bodhicitta, right? It's kind of, and then, you know, maybe we develop true renunciation for ourselves personally. Hard to do. Hard to really think that I'm tired of chasing after endless permutations of stuff in the world, and I'm going to stop doing that, and I'm going to just focus on spiritual goals and attainments, right? Hard to do that. Hard to actually align with that and live that, right? But if we do, then we can apply it to other people. You can say, yeah, they all need to do that too because they have the same problems that I have, same sufferings that I have, and that's bodhicitta. So, what do we do with our lives? We spend our lives working because life is not satisfactory, because life is unsatisfying. I don't know if you ever meet people who are retired. Sorry, Bruce. I don't know if you ever meet people who are retired. Generally, within short order, they're going crazy, right? They're like, I'm just like sitting at home all day. I got nothing to do. I'm bored out of my head. Life is pointless. Life is meaningless. Maybe I'll take up something to occupy my time, so that I'm not just looking at the walls bored. Let me find something to do, whatever it is, that'll keep me busy all day long, right? So if we have to work to live, we stay busy with work, and we fill up our time with work. And if we don't have to work, we're bored and we go crazy. So it's this thing of like, if you have to work, life is generally meaningless. If you don't have to work, life is generally meaningless. It's this thing of like, do I want to? I mean, some people do want to go to work and spend most of their day, a good portion of their day, working at what they do, which is great. You still accumulate money and die and are done. And then what feeling of meaning and satisfaction does one have at the end of one's life, or as one goes through one's life, right? What sense of purpose? Is there any sense of real purpose, of greater purpose, of bigger purpose, right? So after one has the experience of bodhicitta, the direct experience of bodhicitta, one realizes that life is basically empty and meaningless, pursuing any and all mundane activities. Doesn't matter how many clothes you get, how much stuff you get, how many relationships you have, how many partners you have, how many experiences you have, how much you consume, right? How much you acquire, how much money you save in the bank. Doesn't matter. It's not deeply fulfilling. It's not deeply satisfying, and it doesn't provide some kind of deep resonance in one's being that my life has had a meaning and a purpose, and I'm satisfied and I'm fulfilled, right? So once one has this experience, they realize that it's the only way to really fulfill a human mind and to challenge a human mind. The mind is an amazing thing, and we apply our minds to the pursuit of ordinary mundane human activities. But the mind is an amazing thing, can be applied to being fulfilled and being satisfied. And then how to do that? That is ostensibly what we're all trying to do, right? Ostensibly we are all trying to pursue things which are meaningful and satisfying so that we can feel fulfilled, right? But when you become a bodhisattva, you recognize that the only way to be fulfilled, the only way to have a meaningful life, is to help other people, right? And that all the ordinary pursuits and mundane pursuits we have cannot bring any kind of deep fulfillment and satisfaction, really. So once you're a bodhisattva, it's like, I know that I'm going to spend every waking moment for the next however many lives, or however many decades or hundreds of years, spending every moment helping others and serving others to bring them to complete happiness, right? I know what I'll be doing, I know how to do it, and it's incredibly fulfilling and incredibly satisfying, right? So, I think of little moments when I help people. Even just some little simple mundane thing. There's a guy who really needs food, and I go buy some food and give him some food, and I feel really good, for 5 minutes afterwards or 10 minutes afterwards, right? It's really uplifting. It feels good in my heart, right? And my being. These are little confirmations, right? Imagine if you were doing that to the nth degree all the time. Imagine if you had that feeling of fulfillment and satisfaction, to the nth degree all the time, right? So imagine if you were doing the most wholly beneficial things that you can do with your life all the time. What that would feel like, and what that would be as an experience, right, of our lives. So most people work because they don't want to face the fact that there's not much meaningful fulfillment in life. And we try to keep ourselves busy because life is generally meaningless and we have a lot of years to use up. It's like, my dad's a great example. He's in his 80s and he's going blind and can't really do much. And so he just kind of sits there looking at nothing. And so, here's someone who's worked his whole life and stayed busy, endless chores and house taking care of the house and all the rest, right? Work through retirement, and then, you know, second part-time work after retirement, and then it's like, huh, now I can't really do anything. He's losing his hearing. It's like, no friends. And it's just like, wow, okay, here I am, just sitting here with nothing to do. I can't do anything. You can't do anything. You can't see, can't much hear, nobody to interact with. And it's just a sense of like emptiness, right? Like meaninglessness. If one is not doing something with one's mind, with one's heart, with one's intention, it's just meaningless, empty existence, right? So, once you get a realization of bodhicitta, you see for the first time how to spend your life in a meaningful way, and how brilliant it is, and how absolutely incredible and fulfilling it is. And so that every single moment, whether you're sleeping or waking or going to the toilet, means this feeling of wanting to help and serve every living being. And that just thinking all the time about wonderful things you can do to serve others and help others. And we're not talking about feeding people or giving them a place to sleep or something like that. We're talking about teaching people how to end their suffering, how to get out of this realm, how to get to a tantric paradise before they die, right? Highest help, highest teachings. And that single activity is the most engrossing, fulfilling, and satisfying thing that one can do with one's life. So, because everything else in life isn't meaningful, that's the advertisement for bodhicitta, right? The advertisement for bodhicitta is there is nothing else meaningful in life other than helping others and serving others. So, stop trying to fill up life with meaningless activity just to pass the time and just to deny the reality of, I'm not saying it correctly. Stop spending life trying to escape from the fact that we are unfulfilled by being busy. Right? But anyway. And to think about spending the rest of your life in something which is ultimately meaningful to other people, which is, you know, saving them from pain and taking them to, you know, to a paradise, to an eternal paradise. So try to get that feeling, you know, try to have some kind of feeling that the upliftment that I get from really helping someone, I can have that times 1,000 all the time, right? And I would feel so fulfilled. I would feel so gratified if I were living that way, and if that were my priority. I saw it coming, Bruce. You've been percolating back there.
I couldn't hold it in anymore.
That's all right.
The logic of this, though, is a little slippery, because if I sit and have my umpty-umph hamburger of my life, and at the end of that, I declare myself to have had an empty, self-serving, meaningless experience, but then I give Jackie a hamburger, I've given her the same meaningless experience that you're telling me to disallow for myself. Where's the satisfaction in that? I haven't delivered her to some ultra, supra hamburger experience. It's just the same old hamburger no matter who eats it. Yeah. On the other hand, if you want to say that my giving Jackie a hamburger was a superlative in some sense of something that liberated me from the confines of a selfish ego, yeah, then, well, she gets hungry, but I get hungry. So why can't I get...
What about me?
Why can't I get a satisfaction of having relieved someone's hunger, even if it is my own?
Yeah.
She doesn't like him.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, but
she will.
Okay.
She will.
And so it's a very important point, right? And that's why we spend a year on it, right? And that's why it's a guide for entering this way of life, because it addresses all these things. And it talks about all these things, and it says, you know, how do you go about doing this? You know, how do you approach this, right? Am I more important than them? Are they more important than me? Do I not feed myself? Do I feed them? And on and on and on, with a litany of questions like that, right? Which we have to go into and we have to address. And Master Shantideva does throughout the entire guide. You know, so I mean, this is an instruction manual for people who want to live their life like that. And so it addresses all of those questions and all of those issues and says, do this, don't do that, think like this, don't think like that. The point being, and you're exactly right, it's about how you think. What is the perfection of giving? Did Shakyamuni Buddha perfect giving? Yeah, right? He's enlightened, perfected giving. Are there still poor people? Yeah. Does that mean that he didn't perfect giving? No. What is the perfection of giving? It's a way of thinking. It's how one's mind works. So the same is true, just to, kind of cut to the chase. We'll get into it in more detail, but to cut to the chase for now, it's about how one's mind works, right? It's about how one positions. It's about how one thinks. When you're going to the toilet, you're not helping me or anybody else directly, but what are you thinking? And what is your motivation, and what is your feeling, and what is going on in your body-mind system, right? So it's a very important point, which is, if I feed myself, did I stop being a bodhisattva? If I go to the toilet, did I stop being a bodhisattva? Am I only a bodhisattva when I give Jackie a hamburger, right? All very important questions, all very important points.
By the way, I'm willing to give her the hamburger, but the toilet thing is completely off the table.
Yes.
After
So
the hamburger.
If that's what you're thinking, then just let it go.
I was not thinking that.
Are you satisfied with that? No.
He didn't address,
No.
but Bruce, he didn't address the giving a crappy hamburger, which you're not allowed to have anyway.
That's an unfortunate turn of phrase, given
I know.
examples being provided. Let's just say an inferior hamburger.
Okay.
There were more chapters. He's looking at me like I betrayed the cause.
You've got 2 more chances, come on.
Chris is like, go for it, Bruce, go for it.
Give it your all.
He just talked around the question. He didn't answer it. Well, he said he promised to answer it later.
Good.
Give it your all. He's
All
got.
right. So if there is validity in alleviating anyone's hunger,
Yes.
there must be validity in relieving everyone's hunger, including one's own. So if you impute something that transcends personhood, ego, to alleviating somebody else's hunger, then you have to accept that you're just as no more worthy than anybody else, but no less worthy than anyone else.
Of course.
And
Sure.
the hunger as such is indistinguishable whether I experience it or Jackie experiences it on the subject level.
Non-dual hunger?
It's identifiable. I mean, the hunger is the hunger, right? No matter who feels it, I wouldn't think that hunger was pleasure, right? But the point is that it disqualifies the self and it elevates the other without offering, first of all, acknowledging that it's doing that, or offering a justification for it.
I don't think it's implicit in the teaching that it disqualifies yourself. That seems to be your
He just
reading.
spent 20 minutes telling us how miserable we are serving ourselves.
So then that was. Now you
That's
gotta
not- That's not what I.
you gotta take the follow on though, Bruce. Okay?
Wait a minute. If you just keep having another meal, have another, go to the movies, if you do the same things you've always done, consume, then you will never find happiness. You will always be miserable, and even if you think you found happiness, it's only momentary.
But when I hear that, I hear that it's okay to both feed ourselves and to feed other people hamburgers. When I
I
hear
didn't
that.
hear him say that.
So we're in the opening sequence.
I was really putting you off the hook. He refuses. He wants it all out on the table right now.
All right. So, one of the things to say about this, to address your point broadly, is that we all carry certain presuppositions and tendencies, premises, or whatever that we bring with us to say, like, well, if you're telling me that I have to think of other people, then you're also implying that I'm not thinking about myself. And we're not saying that. So everybody brings their presuppositions to this, and that's why we have to go into it in greater detail, because it's extremely important to address all these points, right? How do you stack up compared to Jackie? How are you to think of each other? And you could say in a highfalutin way, well, I can see us as non-dual, and therefore hunger is hunger, and her hunger is equivalent to my hunger, and therefore there's no difference. The average guy walking down the street isn't thinking that way, right? Which is really what we're talking about. We're not talking about an existential debate. We're talking about normal life and how people go through their normal lives. Which is, I'm hungry and he's sitting there begging and I don't care. Right? at large. You know? So really we're just addressing it at that level at this point, which is getting into the mode of, wouldn't it be a wonderful way to go through life where our career is loving and caring about everyone around us all the time? Wouldn't that be a great career? Instead of saying the purpose of my life is to accumulate stuff and to have experiences and to consume, instead of that being the focus of my life, the focus of my life is upon those around me and generating love and compassion in my heart towards them, and loving kindness and whatever wise ways I can engage and demonstrate that. That's what we're saying. In a more rounded out way, right? So it's like that, okay? So to spend our life serving others in ultimate ways is a lovely way to live, and it gets better and better. You know, I mean, that little high you get every time you help someone is just constantly there, right? And it's building and building and building. And Master Shanti Deva says, you know, it's the path is bliss and the result is bliss. It's the blissful path to bliss. You know, it's like, and the Dalai Lama, you know, has so many beautiful quotes around it. You know, riding the steed of compassion from virtue to virtue, and all sorts of poeticisms around it. But the bottom line is it does feel good to care about other people and help other people. It does, and we can confirm it personally and directly. And Master Shanti Deva is simply saying, make that your career. Make that the focus of your life, not acquisition and consumption and self-absorption, right? And then you'll be happy, and life will get better and better and sweeter and sweeter.
That's a very simplistic outlook.
Yes,
That
it
could
is.
lead to a lot of dangerous situations.
That's why we have to go into 10 chapters.
Yeah.
So let's go. Should we take a break? Let's take a break and then we'll go into the chapters, all right?
Okay.
I think that's a great place to, and then we'll get into the 10 chapters. And this is very profound, it's very holy, and it's very deep, and it's very important not to be overly simplistic.
Yeah.
And not to paint with such broad brushstrokes that we end up hurting ourselves or others through simplistic thinking or ignorance or myopia or whatever the case might be, right? And so it's a very, very beautiful topic, very rich topic. So please have a break and then we'll go into it. It's a lovely topic. It's exquisite, you know. How can you really care for other people without shooting yourself in the foot? You know?
Without resenting people that you care for.
Yes, right. Without getting really hostile as you're doing it, right? So that's something.
Miss Katie.
Thank you. I'll let you know when I'm tracking.
Yeah. Give me a cancel check.